All right, guys, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding and subtracting fractions. And if you guys notice in the directions, we do not have to draw an area model, or not an area model, sorry. We do not have to draw a fraction model of this, that we are just able to add and subtract. Now, when we add, it's going to be pretty simple, but it's when we get to subtraction is where you've got a little bit of a difficulty with this. So on letter A, I have 2 wholes plus 1 1/5. And so when you're adding, it's so nice is that you can go ahead, add those whole numbers, you can add the fractions, and then of course we have to be careful because if we have a mixed, or not a mixed number, an improper fraction, we need to make sure that we do turn it into that mixed number and then figure out what we need to do with this. So on this first one, I do not have a fraction, so I can just go ahead and add my whole numbers, which 2 plus 1 is 3. And then of course, when you're adding the fractions, it's basically 0 over 0, sorry, 0 over 5. So we can just go ahead and add this, that we can just say that is 3 1/5. Okay, so this is pretty simple on here because we also kind of pretend that that fraction that's with 2 is basically a 0. All right, so when we get to letter B, this is where it's going to be a little bit difficult. You're not just going to be able to subtract the whole numbers and then subtract the fraction, especially if we do not have a fraction here. So what I need to do is I need to essentially borrow from my whole number to create a fraction to be able to subtract. So whenever you are creating that fraction, I want to look at that denominator and make it so that I have that common denominator. So when I borrow, I'm going to take this 2, I'm going to turn it into a 1, and I've borrowed a 1, which I'm going to turn that 1 that I've borrowed into 8/8 because 8/8 equals 1, and then I have my whole number of 1, so that's going to equal 2. The reason why I chose 8/8 is because 8 is my denominator and I want to be able to subtract it. I don't want to have to find common denominators, anything like that. When you borrow from a number and you're subtracting it, or maybe if you need to add, which you don't need to, but you always want to just look at that denominator and that's what you're going to turn it into. So if this denominator was 100, you would say 100 100ths. If this denominator was a 5, you would say 5/5. So now I can go ahead and I can actually subtract this. So 1 minus 1 is 0, but I don't have to write 0 because then I can do 8 minus 3 is 5/8. And when I show this, I don't want to show 0 and 5/8. I just want to show 5/8. Okay, so down here, this is pretty nice. I've got common denominators, so I don't need to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and add up my whole numbers, which is 5 plus 2 is 7. And then I'm going to add up my fractions, which 2 plus 3 is 5. And then my denominator is fifths. Now this one you're going to be able to look at because what does 5/5 equal? Well, it equals 1. So this essentially is 7 and 1. So I'm just kind of turning that into a 1. So 7 and 1 is going to equal 8. Okay. Same thing here. I'm noticing that I need to borrow and my denominator is a 7. So I'm going to turn my 4 into a 3. And then I'm going to have 7/7 to show that 1. So here is 3 and then here is 4 because that equals 1. And now I can subtract. So 3 minus 2 is 1. 7 minus 2 is 5/7. So 1 and 5/7 is my answer. Okay. Down here, this is pretty simple because again, I don't have a fraction that's there. Even though my fraction has moved over, I still can add my whole numbers and then I can add my fractions. So 9 plus 8 is 17. And then basically I have 3/4 plus nothing is going to be 3/4. So my answer is 17 3/4. F, have a problem again. I'm going to have to borrow. So my 17 is going to turn into a 16. And I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, well, that's thirds. So I'm going to turn that 1 that I borrowed into 3/3. And now I can subtract 15 2/3. So 16 minus 15 is 1. 3 minus 2 is 1/3. So it is 1 1/3. All right. This will get easier as you guys do this. The lovely thing is that you only have to ever borrow when you are subtracting. Okay, so letter G, gosh guys, again, it's pretty simple. I've got my whole numbers and then I've got nothing plus a fraction of 2/3. So I'm going to add 15 plus 17 and 15 plus 17, 12, carry the 1, okay? So I've got 32 and then it's going to be 2/3 because remember, it's basically I've got 0 fractions plus 2/3 and it's just going to be 2/3, okay? So letter H. I don't have a fraction, so I'm going to have to make one. So I'm going to turn my 100 into 99. Okay, and because I borrowed that 1, I'm going to turn that 1 that I've borrowed into 8/8. And I'm going to subtract 20 and 7/8. So now I can do 99 minus 20. 9, don't have to borrow anything, that's nice. So it's 79. And then 8 minus 7 is 1/8, and that would be my answer of 79 and 1/8.